Hello everyone, and welcome to the Future of Dogs podcast, a place for the whole dog world to come together and ask the big why and what if questions that will shape the dogs of the future. Join me, Hannah Malloy, as we chat to some of the world's most groundbreaking professionals intent on enriching and evolving the future of dogs. This podcast is in association with Amplified Behaviour, my online video learning library for dog owners and dog geeks. Big thanks to my dog's favourite food and our Season 1 sponsor, Nature's Menu. With over 40 years in the pet food business, Nature's Menu is Europe's leading expert in raw and natural pet food. So let's jump into the conversation. Welcome to another episode of The Future of Dogs. And this is The Future of Dog Food, Part 2. And we are joined by veterinary nurse and puppy school trainer, Mel Sainsbury. Hello, Mel.
Hi.
Thank you for coming back and hanging out with us again.
No, it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
So last time, Mel, we were chatting a little bit about moving your dog from kibble to raw or fresh food. And you started to mention some of the barriers, getting my terminology in now, the barriers to transitioning from one food to another. And they were things like storage and cost and convenience. So tell us, what are the biggest myths that surround raw and fresh feeding that you've just kind of had to battle against in working people into a different kind of food?
I think the presentation is one of the big things. So I certainly found when we do shows such as crafts or we attend dog shows with stands and things, still now, I mean, I've been working for Nature's Menu for 8.5 years now, and still we have people come up and say, I'd love to feed raw, but I don't think I could stomach it. Or I would love to feed raw, but I'm a vegetarian. I don't think I could. Well, it turns my stomach. And at that moment, it always puts a little smile on my face because I reach into one of our freezers and I grab out a bag of our nuggets, which we have open, and I just get them to look in the bag and say, that's what you'll be looking at every day. And they're blown away because they just imagine it's going to be feet and beaks and eyeballs and legs looking at them. And I can kind of understand where they get that preconception from, because if you Google raw feeding, you come up with all these different sorts of bowls that people have made with ducks' feet and heads and things.
I mean, you could do like a Halloween version, couldn't you?
Oh,
that would be quite a lot
easily.
Halloween edition.
Yeah.
Raw feeding.
I mean, if you want to go down that route, that's absolutely fine. But with our food, it's a real pleasure to deal with. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's not offensive, and you don't really have to have a huge amount of contact with it. We have a lot of vegetarians and vegans that feed our food. Because it is so easy to deal with and it's not overly bloody or gross to look at. It's really neat and tidy and just so easy to use. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception about raw food, that it's going to be messy and horrible to look at, and it's not at all.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest criticisms in the early days of me talking about this, I set something up a long time ago called the Dog Education Project, and that was in association with a non-profit that I was running at the time, and just trying to get education out there, really, just creating some space for that, and that's kind of evolved into this, I suppose. But a lot of the criticism at that time, that was maybe 10 years ago now, was around salmonella. And actually it being genuinely dangerous to handle and dangerous for the dog. Like, where are we at with that? What would you say to somebody who says, I do not want my dog or myself to get a disease?
Yeah, exactly. And who does? We love our dogs. The reason that a lot of us are switching over onto raw or better quality food is because we love and adore our dogs. So the last thing we want to do is make them ill. The raw food industry is actually really tightly regulated, which I think a lot of people don't see or don't understand that side of things. They just assume that because we're making pet food, we go to the abattoir on a Friday evening, we empty their bins, we bring it back, we put it in a bag with a smiley dog on the front, and off we go on a Monday morning and sell it out for a big old profit. And it's really not like that at all. So we are a DEFRA registered manufacturer. And again, important to highlight that not all raw food manufacturers are DEFRA registered, so it's something important to look out for.
Cool.
Because if you are DEFRA registered, it means you have to abide by lots of legislations that are in place. There's over 50 pieces of legislation that are in place just for pet food.
Wow.
It's very tightly regulated on what you can and can't use within the food as well, because obviously we're not heating it to a high temperature. We're not going to be killing off all that bacteria that could potentially be within that food. So anything that's deemed high bacteriological risk, we're not allowed to use. So you won't find sort of brains and guts and bits and bobs in our food that really would turn your stomach anyway if you saw it.
Yeah.
DEFRA also implement a zero tolerance to salmonella. So we are regulated by the Animal Plant Health Agency, who will come out and inspect our premises. We're based in Norfolk, for those of you that don't know. And they come out and knock on the door unexpectedly, and they do an inspection of the whole facility. So the manufacturing facility, the storage facility where we have all the ingredients, etc.
Nice.
And we have to do regular testing as well. So we have a specialised department that has to send samples off on a regular basis to a government-approved lab to make sure that we are not testing positive for Salmonella or Campylobacter. So Campylobacter is regulated at the moment. For those of you that don't know, Campylobacter is generally the bug that makes you quite ill if you eat raw or undercooked chicken.
Cool.
Really prevalent in the summertime when everyone's doing barbecues and you get that nice chicken leg that's black on the outside and pink on the inside. Yummy, yummy. So that's not regulated at the moment, but we have tested for it voluntarily, and we know that we're getting clear results. So yeah, so it's actually more tightly regulated than a lot of people think. And again, it's about ingredient quality as well. So everything that comes into us, we inspect. And if it's not up to our standard, we've got no worries about sending it back to our suppliers. And we do get things that are delivered that aren't up to quality, and they go straight back on the lorry and straight back out again, because we don't want to put that in our foods.
No.
I would say probably 90% of us that work for Nature's Menu are dog owners ourselves, and we feed the food ourselves. So the last thing we want to do is make our dogs poorly. So,
absolutely.
And I think with bacteria, it's really important to point out as well, and even professionals don't take this on board, is that our dogs come into contact with bacteria every single day of their lives.
They're gross, aren't
they? They really are. And I like to use my old boy as an example, because he is probably the grossest dog alive. And he, for the fourth day running this week, he's rolled in fox poo.
Nice.
Oh no, I make a mistake. One of the days it was goose poo. 3 other days it was fox poo. And he will also eat that. So he'll eat all the poo that he finds. So if he doesn't get a chance to roll in it, he'll just eat it as a snack. My other dog will eat carcasses that he finds. I've seen them eat a rat before. Yep. That was attractive. They'll also eat poo on occasion. If there's a lovely baker's poo floating around.
Oh, sugary.
Yeah, that's like a little packet of sweets. So sometimes they'll eat that. They also come home, and it doesn't matter if you're sat there thinking, oh, my dog would never do that. I can guarantee that they come home and lick their bottoms.
Yep. Yummy.
If they have an itch. Yeah.
It's important. It's really, key.
Yeah, it is. They also nibble between their feet as well. If they get mud or anything between their feet, they lick their paws. So they come into high amounts of bacteria. They come into contact with that every single day. And I often make a joke and say, out of all the things that my dogs consume, raw food is way down on the list of my concerns. Way down on the list.
I think we forget, don't we? Originally, dogs would have cached, and they still do. Some of them still do. If they haven't got a garden, they might try and bury something under your t-shirt or under a rug or something. But they will hide meat, just like we did, to put it in a sort of fridge that back then was the floor, and then they'd dig it up and eat it when it was a bit more disgusting than it was when they put it there. So their bodies are built to deal with a high level of bacteria actually in the tummy.
They really are.
And yeah, that's such a good answer, Melanie. Basically, dogs are already disgusting. It's true. They are. They
Yep.
do. If you're really, really worried about infection and disease, you probably shouldn't have a dog. Like,
Exactly.
let's just throw it down.
Yeah. Yep.
It's super hard. When it comes to feeding bones, in the first episode, Melanie, you dropped a little nugget of joy in there that we did not pick apart. And that was that you feed your dog raw chicken wings, frozen chicken wings. Like, how is that possible for viewers who are like, I'm sorry, chicken bones? No.
Yeah. It's a funny one, actually, because we do quite a range of bones at Nature's Menu, raw bones. And I have so many people say to me, oh, I thought raw bones were okay, but I thought chicken bones you really had to stay away from because they're the dangerous ones. But really, it's because as a country, we eat so much chicken. I think that's the sort of thing that we automatically see in practice as an accident. The dog's gone through the bins, it's nicked a chicken carcass or it's nicked a couple of bits off the barbecue and caused itself a problem. So I think we just assume that chicken bones are the most dangerous thing in the world. Actually, I would say it's the other way around. I would say chicken wings, duck wings, those sorts of things are one of the more safer options when it comes to bones, because they have to be full of sort of air pockets. They're much lighter and they're a lot less dense than your mammalian bones. So things like cow bones, lamb bones, those sorts of things. They're a lot lighter. So they're much easier to crush. The dogs can eat them and crush them down and swallow them in nice small pieces. It really depends on the dog and it really depends on the owner if you want to feed. So the biggest worry is they will choke if you feed a raw bone. But in reality, what can't they choke on? I've seen dogs in practice that have choked on a tennis ball. I've seen dogs in practice that have inhaled cat biscuits. I had a dog that had a cat biscuit in its lung where it tried to eat the food so quickly it inhaled a biscuit up its nose.
Oh, no. It's not funny, Hannah. Stop laughing.
I had a little pug rushed into practice that was going blue because it had tried to swallow down a treat, just a dry treat, so quickly it had blocked its throat.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that they can choke on. So yes, they can choke on a raw bone, but again, what can't they choke on? It's all about being sensible with your dog.
And just caveating here for listeners that have just gone, I can feed my dogs chicken bones. We're talking raw, like this is important, right? So
very important.
You cook that chicken bone and actually that is a stabby little knife and that is dangerous for dogs, right? So that's if it's cooked, it's not worth it. Simple as that. But if it's not cooked, chicken is safe, is what we're hearing you say, Melanie. That is so reassuring. And what other kinds of bones could we give our dogs? What do Nature's Menu have in their freezer when it comes to bones?
So we recommend a staging system. So that's why we have so many different options to choose from. So we don't recommend that somebody just goes and buys the first bone that they find that says Nature's Menu on it and chuck it at their dog. So it's all about, as I say, looking at your dog, seeing what they're capable of dealing with. So we have a staging system where we firstly say, make sure your dog has been fed a raw diet for at least 4 weeks continuously before you introduce bones and chews.
Cool.
Because the digestive system does adapt slightly. The stomach acid becomes slightly more acidic when they go onto a raw food. So it just has that double backup of being able to digest the bony material as it enters the stomach. Nice. So we start by recommending our bone-free chews. So we have things like beef trachea, which are lovely because they're so chewy. They're such a great alternative to rawhide. And they've got no bone in them. So they're just really nice, chewy bits of meat that the dogs can really get their teeth into. And we have other things like tripe chunks and beef chunks, things like that are completely bone-free. Once they've had those for a couple of weeks, you'll be able to see them when you first give a dog something like that. And a lot of the time you see it with adult dogs. Sure. You'll see them sort of standing in midair, just sort of and just chewing, not really knowing what to do with it. And as time goes on, they then start to learn to lay down and position it in their paws and get it at the right angle and learn what teeth to use. So once you've gone through those stages, you can then introduce our starter bones, which are things like chicken wings, duck wings, those sorts of things. And then we get slowly more dense as we go on. So after you've had the starter bones, you can then start with the intermediate bones. And those include things like turkey necks. Turkey necks are great because they're really quite large chews that are really meaty. But again, the bone inside isn't too dense because it's from a bird. And then for those real tough chewers, those ones that you want to have a really elongated chew, we've got things like the marrow bones. They're really nice and tough to give something a little bit longer and a nice long chew. Really nice to give on a spring day where they can lay out in the garden. And it still fascinates me to watch my dogs eat a bone, because you can understand every single bit of their mouth that they're using. They use those little incisors to nibble off those little bits of meat close to the bone. They then use those great big canines to rip off those big chunks. And then when they get down to the bone, they're using those molars at the back to really crunch through the bone so it's nice and small enough to swallow. But again, monitor your dog. You've always got to be around when you feed a raw bone, because again, there is a risk of chewing. If you've got the sort of dog that just goes and wants to eat everything in under 3 seconds, you might want to take a pace back and sort of think, is this suitable for him, or should I look at something alternative like a stuffed Kong?
I think, that is important to note, isn't it? Not every dog is going to actually be really comfortable eating a big chewy. Like the way that I describe it on some of my online courses is that it can sometimes be a bit like giving me £1 million in the centre of town in cash. And you're like, oh my God, I've got £1 million in cash in my pocket. And you'll know how sort of valuable I think your dog finds that item.
Yeah.
When you first give it to them, by the look on their face and the preceding behaviour. So just as a top tip for those who might be a little bit concerned that their dog might resource guard something that's super high value, my top tip there, just as a behavioural expert, is to say that it's absolutely normal. First of all, it's totally natural. You've given your dog something that's very precious to them. And the worst thing you can do is actually walk towards them and put your hand on that item. So just respect the dog when you give them a really delicious, high-value item. They're going to want to keep it. That is part of their survival, that they have evolved that way. And one of my top tips there would be to leave them be for a little while, and then come away and see if you can call your dog away to something else. So if your dog is tennis ball mad, my dog actually turned a little bit doggy at one point in his life because he was living with other dogs. So when he got given a bone and he took it in the garden, he was like, this is serious business, Hannah. There's other people around and they can have my things. Luckily, he loves a tennis ball. So I was like, Falks, what's this? And he was like, oh, the tennis ball, amazing. And ran after that, and we could retrieve the item until I could put him in an environment he could relax and eat it on his own. So just a little behavioural, but I love that, Melanie. And are we giving these bones out? Are we giving them straight out the freezer frozen? Do you defrost them first? Like, is there a difference for elderly? Like, I don't know. How would you normally present the new bones to dogs who've really had it for a while?
Yeah, we normally do suggest to defrost them first, because otherwise it depends on how powerful your dog's jaw is, really, because sometimes if they eat them and they're frozen, they can give themselves a little bit of a tummy ache. But personally, I do actually feed them frozen. So again, it's all about individuality. It depends on what your dog likes. Sometimes you'll get it out of the freezer and the dog will go, I don't think so, it's too cold. Whereas my dogs, I drop it on the floor out of the freezer and they go, that's mine, thanks very much.
Delicious, ice cube, nom.
But for your sort of average dog owner, when you're first starting to experiment in these bones, I think it's probably best to defrost them. And then at least, again, you get a good idea of how they're going to cope with them. Are they going to try and swallow them in one go? So it's all about just judging your own dog and making sure that you're happy enough to progress on to the next level before you do.
Excellent. That is such good advice. Thank you. So we were talking a little bit last time about talking to your vets and how difficult that can be. And just sending out loads of love to those of you who are listening that have either had this conversation already or have actually had a bad experience talking to your vet about pet food. We know, in terms of me and Mel right here, we are on the same team as it were, when it comes to inviting everybody into a conversation together and making sure that conversation stays respectful and full of love. So Mel, what are your tips for listeners that might be like, I want to give it a go, or I've secretly, this is lots of my clients actually, they're like, I secretly feed raw. And they haven't told them that. And there's a lot there. There's some feels that I think needs talking about. So what are your top tips when it comes to having those difficult conversations with vets about transitioning?
Yeah, it is a tricky one. And I want to say first and foremost, I'm not against vets, and I'm not against vet nurses. I'm one of you. And I know how you feel. I was in practice for long enough, and I will hold my hands up and say I was one of those professionals who said, don't raw feed. It's terrible. It's bad. The reason I was saying that is because I didn't understand the industry. I hadn't taken the time to go and learn about it and educate myself about it. And the problem is, I think a lot of people have misconceptions of the vet just wants to push the food that's in the waiting room because they earn a packet out of it. They don't. I want to set the record straight on that. They don't. It doesn't matter what food they have in their waiting room. They don't earn a huge amount of money out of it. It's easy for them to have it in there because they can order it easy. It gets delivered every day through their wholesaler. So it's nice and easy for them to have it in there. And I think the most important thing is they trust it. That's what they're educated in, and that's what they trust. And the scary thing is for vets is if they don't want to recommend something that they don't entirely know about and they don't trust. And they don't always have the time to go away and look, I'm going to go away and I'm going to learn about raw after I've done my 16-hour shift and I'm on call tonight and I'm about to spay a bitch and raise 17 puppies. It's not always easy. So it's not a case that they're out to tell you that, don't do it because it's terrible and I want to make a profit out of you. It's not about that. They're frightened. They don't want to recommend something that they're not 100% sure on. So it's easier for them to say, no, let's go down the safer route of biscuits. I think if you want to raw feed and you want to discuss it with your vet, I think it's about you taking the responsibility as that dog owner to do your own research, so that you can go in and be armed with the information if they fire questions at you. So you can go in and you can categorically say, I'm feeding a raw food, but I know it's fully complete and balanced. I know it's got everything in there that my dog needs. Because that's one of the major concerns from veterinary industry is that people are just feeding 2 carrots and a chicken carcass a day. And that's not going to be enough to nutritionally sustain any dog. So it's about understanding that this food you're feeding is fully complete and balanced and made by professionals who know what they're doing. It's about health and safety as well. So it's about also explaining, I've chosen this pet food company because I know they are DEFRA registered and I know they have procedures in place to ensure that this food is as safe as possible to feed. I'm also fully aware of the hygiene regulations I have to take. It's raw meat at the end of the day. We're not asking you to bath in it. We're not asking you to rub it all over your laptop and your TV remote before you feed it. We're telling you to pop it in your dog's bowl and wash your hands properly afterwards. Wipe your surfaces, wash up your bowls, wash up your utensils. It's like preparing some chicken for dinner or your roast beef for your Sunday lunch. If you're gonna prepare that, you know exactly how to wipe down the surface afterwards and to wash your hands before you pop it in the oven. So it's about having the same respect for your raw dog food as you do your own raw meat at home. And just being armed, I think, with the information that causes concerns to vets, because it's generally the same things that they repeat. Is it complete and balanced? You've got bacterial concerns. They're the things that they're most concerned about. And I think if you can calmly sort of say, yes, I have researched that and I've gone with the company that I trust and I've spoken to the staff members there and I've got this information, I'm happy to feed it. They can't really argue with that. It's your dog and you are the one to decide what to feed your dog. Nobody else can tell you how to feed your dog. In the same way, nobody else can tell you how to feed your own child. It's up to you. And you want to make the best decisions. And if you feel that's the best decision for your dog, you've got every right to follow it through.
And you know what? It's remembering, isn't it, that you're both on the same team. I think we forget that with vets sometimes. I don't know whether it's just the setup of the room, but because you're both on different sides of the table or something like that, suddenly, like, I have this opinion. Negotiating those conversations with people who have, my goodness, so much education. Vets have done so much learning, like mind-blowing amounts of information, and vet nurses, like a huge amount of stuff that you guys are juggling. And I think often, just speaking as a pet owner now, or guardian, is you have to remember that you're on the same side as the vet. Like, the vet is on your dog's side. The vet loves your dog and wants its health to be the best it could possibly be. So I think just remembering that that's where their advice comes from. I love that, Mel, that you're like, look, they don't make loads of money from selling this particular food. Like, it's just what they know sometimes. And we're all like that, aren't we? We're like, well, I buy this one because it's the one that I know. We've all been very well trained for the last 50 years on marketing and branding. And we will, start to trust a company that we have experience with. And so completely normal for that to occur. Just picking apart a little bit of one of those terms that you use there, which I love, but would love you to expand on if possible, Mel, which is complete and balanced. What does that mean in terms of pet food? What makes really quality pet food, Nature's Menu raw and fresh food, complete and balanced? What does that mean for a pet owner?
So complete and balanced means, in technical terms, it basically means that it's the food that you're talking about contains all the nutrients that are needed to sustain a healthy dog, puppy, senior, whatever it may be. But not only does it contain those nutrients that are needed, it also contains them at the correct balance, because a lot of nutrients work in synergy with one another. The one that springs to mind that most people know about their own dogs is calcium and phosphorus, especially if you've got a large breed dog. People get obsessed with calcium and phosphorus ratios because you have to have them in a certain balance for them to be able to work together. And if you get one too high and one too low, or vice versa, it can be really detrimental. So saying that we are complete and balanced means that we are working to scientifically proven nutritional guidelines, which are known as the FEDIAF guidelines. And they are worked to by most of the big pet food companies. So we're making sure that our pet food is just as complete and balanced as all those big name pet foods that you're so used to seeing in your veterinary practice, or all those sciencey brands that you're used to seeing. We're all working to exactly the same nutritional guidelines. So we make sure that our food is easy to feed, because you do hear, and again, I think this is where veterinary have got sort of a bad impression of raw. When raw feeding first came to light, I shouldn't say first came to light, because people have been doing it since the dawn of time with dogs feeding them raw meat. But when it first became a fashionable thing, a lot of people were homemaking diets, and they were, for example, feeding a chicken carcass and the odd carrot every now and then, and then wondering why their dogs were listless, or they were getting bendy bones, or their nails were falling out, or they were getting skin conditions. And obviously the vets see that bad side. They don't often get to see those lovely healthy animals that are skipping through the forest on a daily basis. They get to see the sick, poorly ones most of the time. So that's really important, is making sure your food is complete and balanced. You can still do a homemade diet, but I think they require experience if you want to mix your own ingredients together, because you've got to understand the nutrients and the levels that you're required. Or are required for your dog. Because if you get something slightly wrong, it's not always immediately apparent. You can't the following day go, oh, he didn't get enough zinc in his food yesterday. I can tell by the colour of his eyes. I'll add some zinky food in today. It's not as easy as that. It'll be 4, 5, 6 years down the line when the dog's coat goes brittle, or his nails fall out, or he gets an issue with his eyes. And it's really hard to then trace back, oh, maybe I haven't been given enough zinc. So at least by feeding a complete and balanced food that's been formulated professionally, you haven't got that worry. You know it's got everything in that they need.
That is excellent. So, and that's hard, isn't it? You really do need a lot of knowledge to really be able to say that is balance. Like, that is what a dog needs. And I know back in the day we had no idea, didn't we? We were feeding dogs table scraps, and they have survived for a long time on those. To be honest with you, I think one of the earliest dog food biscuits was basically, in fact, what most people used to feed their dogs was like milk and a sort of biscuity thing, a bit like Weetabix.
Yeah.
That had very little meat in it. We're going back, almost 100 years now. And that was sort of what was known. So a lot of knowledge, isn't it, can be passed down through culture. But in this generation, we've got so much more research that backs what we understand about what dogs should be eating. And different breeds have different needs, different heights and sizes, and understanding a little bit more about what that particular dog might need, I think, is really crucial, isn't it, in terms of quantity. Old school, I'm throwing you right back now, Melanie. Back in the day, dogs used to have white dog poo. I get asked this a lot by my clients. I'm really intrigued to see what you will say. Why did dogs used to have white dog poo? What's that about?
I think there's two reasons for that, and I am old enough to remember white dog poo. I think there's two main reasons for it. I think, first and foremost, we have become much more hygienic, and most of us do pick up after our dogs responsibly.
Cool.
Back in the day when I first had dogs, nobody really picked up after their dog. It would just disintegrate, wouldn't it? So
they were encouraged to do it in the gutter, weren't they? They were like, just let your dog squat over the edge of the road and that'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you were sort of a bit of a freak if you then started to pick it up. But now it's completely opposite. If you dare walk away from a poo, people are on you straight away. Excuse me.
I've got a bag for you. Here you go. Chase you down the road. Yeah.
So I think that's probably first and foremost why we don't see the white dog poo, because over time, obviously, it discolours and becomes dry from the sun. I think second of all, we were, and again, when I first had dogs, when I was growing up as really young, we used to get things from the butchers to feed them, and we used to feed them high amounts of bone. Now, any of us that are regular raw feeders, we know that if we do on occasion feed a large bone, or they have a high quantity of bone, you will get those white poos. You will get dry white poos.
Coming back. Come on. Amazing.
So we don't want to tip them over and be too white and dusty. Sure. We want that nice sort of firmness to them. But yeah, I think the days of butchers feeding dogs are dwindling. I think some of them are coming back because you see dog minces advertised and bags of bones and things. But yeah, it used to be such a popular way to feed a dog. That's what everybody did back in the day, really. And they don't really do that anymore. It's all manufactured now.
That is ace. Okie dokie. So just to finish this off, Mel, would you just give us your top 3 tips for treat training when it comes to using raw food? If you're eating normal raw food day to day, how do you treat train a puppy if they are already on a raw food?
So some people get really obsessed over this. And if a dog is raw fed, they don't want anything else to pass its lips apart from raw food. But I, for one, certainly don't want to go out with a pocket full of raw chicken. I can't think of anything more disgusting.
No, thank you.
I think you've got to relax a little bit. And again, talk about dogs as they were. They're scavengers. They will naturally have a very varied, mixed diet. If they were left to their own devices, they probably would eat a majority of raw, but they would also come across cooked things as well. So I think if you're treat training and you're raw feeding, look for something that's as natural as possible. If you really want to go down sort of the 100% raw route, look at freeze dried. Freeze dried is a new technology that's really exploding onto the pet food scene. And it's absolutely fascinating. And it's such a wonderful way of preserving food. So it's simply raw. It's either raw chunks of meat or raw nuggets, as we make, placed in a freeze drying machine, which extracts all the moisture. So it's quite happy to live at room temperature.
Wow.
And us as a company, we actually do little freeze dried treats, which are we do 100% chicken, turkey, lamb, and beef.
Wow.
So you can use those, and they're nice little sizes as well to use. If you don't want to go down the freeze drying route, again, look for natural treats. There's plenty of natural treats out there now, but just make sure they're exciting. I've seen so many poor puppies turn up to class, and these owners are all proud because they've bought their water bowl and they've remembered their bed, and they've bought this wonderful bag of treats that the dog goes nuts for when it's at home.
Yes.
And they whack a biscuit in front of the puppy's nose, and the puppy goes, "No, I'm going over there to see the next door neighbour. He looks much more fun."
Yes.
So make your treats exciting. Moist treats are the best, even though I can't bear that word, but they are the best.
My housemate hates that word too. That's so funny.
Because not only do they really help to emphasise the flavour, but they prevent your dog from getting too thirsty as well. Again, so many people make that mistake. They're piling in these biscuits to these dogs because he likes them, but then the dog can't concentrate because he's so busy going, "God, I'm so thirsty. I need a drink. I can't concentrate." And you want something that your dog will work hard for as well. So if somebody's dangling a £50 note in front of me, I'll work quite hard for that, as opposed to somebody who's just sliding a 20 pence across the desk at me. I know which way I would go. So you want to find something that your dog goes crazy for.
So true.
And again, there's so many natural treats that are available on the market, but obviously Nature's Menu make the best ones.
You do. Like it's not difficult to, my dog eats these because they are the best. And we did treat trials, as we said in the first step. They are soft and they smell nice. And it's just, if I go to a client's house and I've got a packet of Nature's Menu treats in my treat pouch, I just have to hand it over. Because I know that I've treat trumped anybody that I'm, unless they already have these, or, freeze-dried liver. That is just delicious. So I have to say, the dogs are the ones that chose these, and we all like an easy life, so I will always go for the best kind of treat that is going to get and pay for the behaviour that I want to see again. You get quicker behaviour, simple as that. So exactly. Thank you so much for that, Mel. And you have a podcast as well, don't you? Tell us a bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so we have the Pupcast, which we've now done 2 series of, which involves me yakking on again. You can tell I quite like talking about food.
I love it. She's a pro. She's a pro at podcasting. She's a pro at raw feeding.
And it's just a series of me talking to different people from the industry. So we've had trainers and behaviourists. We have had TV presenters on there as well. So it's been a really nice mix of people. So it's not about just talking to people who are raw fanatics. It's about all aspects of people who love dogs and are in different areas of the profession. So yeah, it's a great little podcast to listen to.
Okay. A complete and balanced podcast.
Yes,
I like
indeed.
it. It's true. You guys started, we're really very, very grateful to have had Nature's Menu as a season 1 sponsor. And I loved it halfway through the season. I was like, it is real in every way. And our podcast is real in every way. And we've just hung out well together. So Mel, I'm in. I think it's delicious. My dog already eats it. And I know where to go to find Nature's Menu products. But if you have never heard of these guys before, or actually you're really thinking about transitioning, or you just want to see what Nature's Menu have been developing recently, where can we find more information about Nature's Menu?
So I think probably the best place to go is our website, naturesmenu.co.uk, and you can see everything on there. But we also have so many independent stockists all over the country. So many independent pet stores and big pet chains, they all stock us. So have a look at your individual pet stores. They're great for chatting with. They've got years of experience, many of them. So have a look on the website, get an idea of what you fancy, what you might want to take a look at, and then pop to your local store to actually have a physical look at it, and maybe have a little trial as well whilst you're there.
That's amazing. And you can get it delivered as well, all over the country.
You can, yeah. So not only can you order through our website and have it delivered to your door, again, many independent stockists also offer a delivery service as well, so which is really handy if you've got large dogs. You don't want to be carrying back loads of frozen bags of food. So yeah, have a little investigate. But we are so easy to come by and so easy to order. We're all over the place. So yeah, pop onto the website and have a good look.
That is fab. And you guys have got a podcast. And what would I at you on? Are you on the socials? Do you guys do social media on a big way?
We are. So you can find us on Facebook and you can find us on Instagram as well.
Boom.
So yeah,
Cool.
So have a look on there. And we always love seeing pictures of dogs eating our food, using our food, and lovely suggestions of how to put it into mental stimulation toys and tools as well. So if you stuffed a Kong with Nature's Menu stuff, or you feed it in a slow bowl or whatever, send us pictures. I love stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of things like that.
Get interactive, folks. These guys want to hear from you. They're a company that actually genuinely really enjoy interacting with their customers. So thank you so much, Melanie. That is just a feast for the ears. And that's all we have time for another episode of The Future of Dogs. So keep dreaming your big what ifs and changing the world.